Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. Got another Alestrals video for y'all. Got another locals report. So I played in just webcam locals this week. I ended up hanging out with a friend instead of playing in app locals, but did still play in webcam locals because I was very eager to play my Earth deck since I got my physical copies of all the cards I needed in for it. So it was, like I said, very eager to try that out. And we went 3-1 again, which was pretty awesome. I actually have the decks I played against written down right over here. I can kind of talk about the matches here in a bit as well. But let's see, we played against Morphrost round 1 and won. We beat Solar round 2. Round 3 we lost to a really cool Thunder deck. And then round 4 we defeated Rhinosect. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. I did kind of hope to play against the Drakking Drakid deck because I don't really have much experience against it yet, but I imagine that will come in time. So, excuse me, sorry about that. So I think that I'm going to play an Earth build pretty similar to this one that I'm about to show off here in the webcam tournament. I'm actually still like not 100% sure I'm going to play in the webcam big tournament this weekend. I'm probably like 80% sure, but I'm going to play an Earth build, I think pretty similar to this one. You may be thinking, well, Hex, why would you show off your build before the tournament? Because the locals are best of one, I'm not going to be showing off my side deck because it wasn't particularly relevant. And also the build is going to change. Also, like, I think Earth is a deck people are like expecting and preparing for anyway. And I don't think my build is doing anything too crazy or outlandish. So, I mean, it's kind of like, you know, during the Challenger Cups when I was like topping and I was still showing off my Snake Eye build every single Challenger Cup. I didn't really have an issue doing that because, like, it's Snake Eye. People were expecting it anyway. So, without further ado, gonna go ahead and talk a little bit about this Earth build that we took to locals here. Starting off with a playset of probably just one of the best Earth monsters in the game, if not the best standalone Earth monster in the game, and that is going to be Viscerus. Viscerus, for those who are unfamiliar, is like Hydrogeddon if you play Yu-Gi-Oh! When it battles over something, you get to summon another copy from the deck. It comes out in defense mode, but it also gets a nice little buff for each copy of Viscerus you have in play, including itself. So it's already going to start off as a 5/2. And as you may or may not know about the game of Alestrals, 5 is a pretty good number. It's a pretty important number. So Viscerus, I think, is particularly good post-ban list because, you know, with the limits of both Earthquake and resting on your laurels, big defensive decks are going to be better, and that makes cards like Cryoblast that are good at dealing with Viscerus worse. So as Viscerus outs get worse overall, Viscerus in turn, of course, ends up getting a little bit better. So naturally, we're going to have a playset of Viscerus, and then probably the other contender for best standalone Earth Alestral is going to be Equilinx, and of course, we are on a playset. I mean, it's just repeatable rune destruction is wild. 4/3 is very, very good stats. For not only just a 1 spirit in general, but especially for an effect like this. It nexuses, which is relevant for just, you know, effects in general, as well as getting an extra spirit damage, and overall just a great card. Like, the funny thing is, like, Viscerus is like probably the standalone stronger card, but a lot of people will like really go out of their way to out Viscerus, so sometimes it feels like it doesn't have as much impact, even though the impact is, you know, forcing your opponent to immediately address it. But Equilinx, if your opponent doesn't do the same, then this is just going to outvalue them so hard, especially in combination with Demeter, of course, the Divine Rune for the Earth deck. I will say, too, that this Earth build is pretty similar from the one I showed off last week, another reason why I'm not too fussed about talking it here. So, of course, we next up have 3 copies of Mudlet. Mudlet, of course, the new addition from Daybreak, common card. This is a very reactive card. I find that a lot of the time, if I'm going first, I actually don't really like opening this card. Like, there are a lot of hands where I will keep, like, 1 Alestral and then 4 counter/invoke runes, but if I'm going first, then and that 1 Alestral is Mudlet, I'm actually probably not going to keep that hand, because, again, I'm not trying to drop this on turn 1. Very reactive. It's very, very good. It's like, I mean, it's Earth Eddy. You know, what can you say? You sacrifice 1 attack, you get +2 defense, which does end up being relevant a decent amount of the time. And it's also repeatable, you know? If it does live, you get to just, you can Nexus onto it. You could do that during your opponent's turn with Alter to swap their stuff. you know, to make it unable to attack. There's just so many applications for the Mudlet. But again, it is a very reactive card. It's not a particularly proactive card. All right. Last couple of Earth Elestrals are going to be 2 copies of Moss Station. So we're still on the 2 Moss Station. I do think that of our Earth Elestrals, this is probably the weakest one. It's why we're only on 2, not 3. And the main reason for that is that the 6 attack is very threatening. This is actually really good on turn 1. This is actually both proactive and reactive Celestial, because you can, you know, throw it down on turn 1. It represents not just, you know, a 6 attack, or I was going to say not just a 5 stat, but a 6 stat, which of course is even harder to out. 5 already being kind of the threshold for what a lot of Elestrals are able to deal with, but of course the kind of reactive part of it is also being able to battle over, like, especially defense mode. Astrab is so good. Of course, this card is much like got 1 attack force. It's only got 1 defense, so it will switch to defense mode, but we're playing a decent amount of counter runes that can stop opponents from just like running over this, so I still like it. One of the main reasons I still like Moss Station, because I know some people are not like super up on this card, and I get it. I think this, of the Earth cards, this is probably the most cuttable. But one reason I do still really like this is Altar of Stars, right? If your opponent's attacking into you, your defense mode Moss Station, you have an Altar of Stars. That basically kind of makes it Sakuretsu armor, because you flip this to attack mode, it's got 6 attack, and then their dude attacks into it, and then they are donezo. So, yeah, I'm still a fan of the Moss Station. I think it's still a decently threatening enough card. I will say, if we get another good Earth 1-drop, this will probably be the first one to be cut. But this is also why I think Earth is just so good as a deck in general, is because it has so many good 1-drop Earth spirits. Like, they're not just like good stat-wise, they also have great effects, very relevant effects as well. So, like I said, that's all the Earth Elestrals that we play, but we do still play a few more Elestrals. 3 copies of Astrabit, of course. I mean, it's the bunny. Everyone plays the bunny. It's pretty much a staple at this point. I don't know if I have seen... I'm sure I have at some point, but I've definitely not played an Elestral deck that does not play 3 Rabbit. But for Thunder Elestrals, we're also on 2 copies of Elichick, and I'm actually kind of considering bumping this up to 3, and also playing 3 Demeter, which I'll talk about in a sec. So I know most builds either play 3 Demeter, 0 Elichick, or they play 3 Elichick, 2 Demeter. Well, I only own 2 copies of Elichick right now, as sad as that is to say. I actually have one that should hopefully be arriving soon as a part of some other cards I'm getting too, but this card is great. I mean, Demeter is just an excellent Divine Rune. You always want to see it for reasons I'll talk about when we talk about Demeter in particular here in a moment, but being able to search this on turn 1 is great. This is an excellent turn 1 play. Like, opening Elichick plus, you know, like Eviscerus is great. These are exactly the 2 Elestrals. Like, if I opened these and then like 2 counters and an Invoke Rune, that's like an ideal turn 1 hand, because you can turn 1 Elichick, grab the Demeter, set your counter runes, and then now you have the Viscerus plus Demeter to threaten with on your follow-up turn. It's excellent. And even later in the game, like, Elichick's 4-1 body is still actually very solid. And I mean, especially with Demeter buffing it up to 7, can run over a lot of very relevant things. So, like I said, I'm actually considering playing a 3rd copy in addition to 3 Demeter, just because of how good, especially in a post-banlist meta, Demeter is. So, this is naturally one of the biggest shifts of the Elestrals meta following the ban list. A lot of people have talked about this, where, you know, beforehand with Lavalith and Resting on Your Laurels being at 3, and 5 just being efficient on top of being able to play those cards, it was always a risk to run out, like, you know, the Divine and Stadium runes and all that. But now with those cards limited, Lavalith and, you know, Resting especially, these kinds of strategies become a lot safer. And let me tell you something, having a Demeter up, just always having access to a Demeter is so good. Like, if I have an opening hand that has an Elichick and Demeter, I don't even really consider that a drawback, because I am more than happy to have the 2nd copy of Demeter in my hand. With the limiting of Resting and Earthquake in particular, this deck kind of does have, and I mean, of course, every deck has less access to, like, your like removal on your turn. Like, of course, we still have like counter runes like shield and PTA and all that kind of stuff. When it comes to like the ability to remove Alestrals on your turn, there's not quite as many options for that. But Demeter offers a great way to do that, and just giving one of your dudes +3/+3 and almost assuredly letting it run over. As I touched on with Elechik, this is even good with the Elechik that searches it, buffing it up to 7, letting it run over pretty much anything that your opponent would drop on turn 1. It pairs extremely well with the Equilinx in particular, with the Nexus ability, right? Because the idea here, of course, is that we can throw down the Demeter, you know, put really any number of Earth Spirits on it. I usually do 1 or 2, obviously just depending on how early or late in the game is, if I have another Demeter in hand, etc., etc. But you can Nexus, you know, the Equilinx effect, Nexus one of the spirits from the Demeter to the Equilinx, blow up one of their back row, and then you have 2 spirits on the Equilinx that you can swing in with. And if you need to still battle over something and the 4/3 body isn't enough, you can of course just Demeter to make it a 7/6 and then get over anything. So like particularly very, very strong combinations of cards. I've had games, honestly, where I'll like the Equilinx is like the only Alestral I'll draw for the first like 4 or 5 turns of the whole game, but because I drew it with Demeter, I can just like use these and counter runes to just maintain control of the board state. Again, repeatable rune destruction is so absurd, especially when you compare it with the ability to buff the Equilinx. So I think this is like the core of why, you know, not Equilinx, but Earth in general is so good. Of course, again, pairs very well with the Viscerus, with the ability to battle over stuff and get more copies. Yeah, I mean, just giving your dudes +3/+3 is just so obscenely good. We are also playing the Stadium Flowy Forest. We've got 2 copies of that. I was on 1 before, but now we're up to 2 here. So, or was I on 2 before? I actually don't remember in the last build I showed off. But, so Cryoblast, initially I thought the Forest would be more important because I thought more people were going to be on Cryoblast, but as the meta's kind of developed and Cryoblast isn't quite as good, you know, of course, the main interaction with that being with Viscerus, making it 3 defense, and then not able to be killed by Cryoblast. But, I mean, that said, still just giving all of your Earth dudes +1/+1 is, of course, great. The Viscerus becomes 6 attack by itself and can take out pretty much anything. The Equilinx becomes a 5. The Mostation becomes absurdly powerful. Even the Mudlip going from a 3/3 to a 4/4 is extremely relevant. Like, that any amount of stat buff here is pretty good. We're not a deck that relies really heavily on our Stadium. Of course, we're not like Thunder where we have like a card like Race to the Top that we have to have it in play for. We really do just like the incidental stat buff sometime. It is also nice to have another option to Nexus from, potentially from the Equilinx. Now, not quite as good as Demeter, because of course if you take from the Forest, it'll go to the Yard, but there is actually yet another minor reason to play the additional copy of Forest, or I guess just more than one in general. And that is to take out other Stadium cards. Again, you know, with the Lavalith and the Resting going to 1, Stadium strategies are becoming more popular. So being able to take out that Mount Olympus from the Thunder decks. Solar also plays their Stadium a decent amount of the time, you know, so you can take that out as well. It's a nice option to have. It's a very, couple of very like minor good effects that it gives. Alright, next up here we've got Earthquake. Earthquake is Earthquake. Obviously, we're already in Earth deck, so we're naturally going to play the 1 copy. So this is the card I'm probably the least certain about in the build right now, and that's the 2 copies of Cryoblast. I mentioned, I believe, last week that I put in the Cryoblast as a means of having more, like basically spell speed 1 is the Yu-Gi-Oh term, but like more like invoke speed removal, like stuff for my turn. But I will say, the Cryoblast has just not been very good. I've played in, you know, multiple locals with this deck and also done testing with it, and the Cryoblast just doesn't really do enough, I feel like. It's helped out in, like, some minor occasions, but never been, like, I don't know, as game-winning as I want it to be. That said, I haven't, like I said, done much testing against Draking Drakid. I know this could take out a Drakid. It's not bad against that, like, kind of Water 5 style strategy in general, but maybe it's more of a sideboard card for that reason, so... like I said, I'm not like super sold on keeping these in the main deck. That might be one of the major changes I make moving forward. Alright, Ambro is Ambro, so of course we're playing 3 copies of that. The 1 copy of Resting on Your Laurels, still great. Yeah, of course we're going to still play the 1 of that. I think we were playing 2 before anyway, so... 3 copies of Altar of Stars. I've said it before and I'll say it again. This is an insane counter rune for this deck in particular. You have so many favorable interactions, right? That you need to be on a playset of this card. This card is weird. I've actually thought about going down to 2. Because there are a decent amount of situations where it just doesn't come up. But I think if I do follow through on my plan to put in a 3rd Elichic, then we absolutely still play 3 Altar. And even without, I think playing 3 Altar is still quite good, just because, like, there's so many common situations. Like, you know, you've got your attack and defense mode Viserys. They either try to target your attack mode Viserys with some kind of removal, or they try to battle over the defense mode one. Boom, you go Altar, switch one spirit from the other. If they're battling into the defense mode one, you can swap it to attack mode. It's got an extra spirit. It'll battle over your opponent's dude. They'll lose a spirit, and then you summon the 3rd Viserys from your deck, and you don't lose out on any advantage. Very, very basic, but very, very effective interaction with Altar of Stars. The Moss Station, as I mentioned before, is another one. This is one reason why I really like this card in this deck, is because we're playing 3 Altar of Stars, right? They go to battle into your Moss Station, you swap this into attack mode, instead of swapping their dude into defense mode, they battle into it, and then boom, this is effectively Sakuretsu armor, right? So, Astrabbit. Honestly, I've had situations before where I have, like, Astrabbit Elichic up, you know? And it's a turn where, like, I've cleared their board, so I, like, battle with both. They go to attack into my attack mode Bunny, I Altar of Stars, wheel the Thunder from the Elichic to the Astrabbit. This does kill the Elichic, but it protects the Rabbit and gives another Thunder Spear, which lets me look at my top 3 and then add one again. So, and that's just like manipulating the position of your own dudes. Of course, manipulating the position of your opponent's creatures is also extremely good. So, yeah, like I said, Altar of Stars just has so many great interactions in this deck that, yeah, I think a playset, even though it's not a card that's like always going to be live, and it's, oops, sorry, I bumped the desk there, and it's not like always going to be a card that you want to top deck, I still think having a playset just for how many different things you can do with it is quite good. But I could see a world where we go down to 2 copies if we really, really want to play something else, but I don't know if I have something else I want to play that badly right now. 3 copies of Gorgon's Gaze. Gorgon's Gaze is Gorgon's Gaze, quite effective. Rhino Sect is becoming a lot more popular. This card has saved me by using this on the Rhynymph to stop them from being able to turbo out their 8/5s, or at least, if not, you know, stop it altogether, delay it until I'm more ready to take them on. So, yeah, I just really like Gorgon's Gaze. Of course, it's a great card. 3 copies of PTA, another very good generic rune card. And then 3 copies of Shield of Achilles, and that is going to be the current main deck. So one of the major changes from last time is we took out the Tsunamis, which I like. It makes our spirit math a lot easier, a lot better, and honestly, it's like having the taking out the Tsunamis for the 3rd PTA and Shield, I think, is fine. These cards are both very good, and a lot of the time, honestly, like the biggest pro of Tsunami, of course, is that it turns everything to defense mode, right? So it can stop like your opponent's big board, but by taking those out and then playing more of these individual removal cards, I find that a lot of the time we're just able to pick apart, you know, boards one Celestial at a time and remove them a lot more effectively, as opposed to just switching a bunch to defense mode and then hoping we can deal with that with what we have, you know, on the follow-up turn. So I very much like that change. Like I said, Cryoblast is the big one where this card has not just been as useful or as good as I hoped it would be, but yeah, I don't know. Aside from like 3rd Elichic, if I can get it before the webcam tournament, still kind of struggling to think of what I would put in instead, but we'll be working on that. Oh, and of course the Spirit deck. Let's talk about the Spirit deck a little bit. So it's pretty simple. I've got 4 Zaptors for our 5 Thunder Elestrals, 2 Flare Mines for the 2 Cryoblasts, and the other, what is this, 6, so 14. 14 are Terratluses. I really hate that I don't have all of the same Terratlus, but, you know, it is what it is, so. Yep, like I said, very simple Spirit deck. I mean, the Spirit math will be even simpler if we just put in more Thunder or Earth cards, but I'm still not quite 100% sure what exactly I want to put in instead of the Cryoblast if I end up taking those out. But yeah, like I said, with 3-1 again at the webcam locals, played against a lot of really cool people. I guess I could talk a little bit about the rounds very briefly. The Morphos deck, I feel like I really want Morphrost to be good, but like it's so hard to get the ball rolling with that deck, and the efficiency I think of you know, my ability to deal with their stuff really amplified that part of that matchup. Solar, I'm trying to think of how that match went. I remember there was a bit of back and forth with our stadiums that was pretty nice, and I think that was the game where I Nexus. Oh, I Nexused, I put an Earth on Elichick and then Nexused it to the Equilinx to blow up. That's a bit of Nexusing I did there. My Thunder opponent in round 3 was very cool. They were on the Sonicore build, which is very nice. And then, yeah, Rhino Sect round 4. Like I said, I had to be, I opened multiple Gorgon's Gaze and I was just very aggressive about using these against the Rhynymph. I wasn't able to like kill the Rhynymph after the first gaze, so I had to just use the second one on the following turn, like I said, because even one Rhino Sect coming down would have been too much at that point, but I feared multiple coming down as well. But the Rhino Sect did eventually come down, but we were able to address it. Demeter helps in that matchup a lot, just being able to potentially beat over the body in combination with like Feloy Forest or like, you know, Demeter on like a Moss Station to make it like a 9 attack or something like that. So we have outs. Yeah, I think that's going to do it for this kind of mini deck profile / locals coverage. I really like doing this weekly video series, and if I do end up playing in the big webcam tournament, which again I have plans to, about 80% sure I'm going to, then I will probably make a follow-up video about that. So definitely look forward to that. But thanks as always for watching. This is Hexlex, and I hope you have a fantastic day.